Here I have graphed the standard sine curve or sine wave on a graphing utility called Desmos. This is a free online graphing calculator. And we can see that we have our standard basic shape here of our sine curve from 0 to 2 pi. So we go all the way from 0 to 2 pi. And you can zoom in and zoom out. So I'm going to zoom out so we can see that the sine curve goes forever in both directions, and it repeats itself and has exactly the same pattern every 2 pi units. So we're going to play around with and observe what happens when we change the number or the value that is being multiplied times the front of our sine function. Right now, the a, or what we're multiplying at the front of the function, is 1, so that's just our standard sine curve. I'm going to raise it to 2. So we see what happens there. The top of the curve reaches a positive 2, the bottom of the curve reaches negative 2, and from the middle of the graph to the top and from the middle to the bottom we have a distance of 2 units. And we can raise that higher, and I can make the amplitude as high as I wish to be. So go all the way here, our graph goes all the way to 10. So now, changing the amplitude vertically stretches the graph by that factor. Let's go back to 1, our standard sine curve. So here's our standard sine curve. And when you click on the graph, it brings up those key points that were on our standard sine curve. Let's observe what happens when the number multiplied times the front of the function becomes negative. So you notice what happens as we switch over to negative numbers. The sine curve inverts or reflects through the x-axis. So let's put it at negative 3. So if we multiply the front of the function by negative 3, notice that the graph is stretched by a factor of 3, and also the negative out front makes the graph flip upside down. So we still have from the middle of the graph to the top is a distance of 3, and from the middle of the graph to the bottom is a distance of 3. But all of the y values get multiplied by a negative as well, so the graph flips upside down. I'm going to hide the sine curve. You're going to do that by clicking on the little round circle here next to the sine curve. I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to show the cosine function now. And we're going to put a back to 1 so we can observe the standard cosine function. So from 0 to 2 pi, here's our standard curve, and we can click on the graph and see those key points that we are familiar with from 0 to 2 pi. As we zoom out, we see that standard cosine curve, that standard shape, that basic shape that we've talked about from 0 to 2 pi, repeats itself every 2 pi units in both directions. And once again, we play around with the value of a, stretching our amplitude to be 4. We see that the curve reaches up to a value of positive 4 and down to a value of negative 4. So what happens when the graph becomes negative? So let's put it at negative 4 and see what happens. As we go into the negative values, we see that the graph flips or reflects through the x-axis. So we're going to go to negative 4, and we see that the top of the graph, top of the curve, once again reaches a positive 4, and the bottom of the graph reaches negative 4, and that occurs throughout the entire graph. But the graph has now been flipped upside down. So we see that it starts low, then goes high, and then comes back down.